if money is like starting to like really get to a point where I'm struggling, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills or that kind of thing, I need to sit and evaluate, okay, what is it here or how am I living that's not in alignment? And so the biggest indication for that was the day after I quit the restaurant and sold my shares, I got a phone call from a friend. He had this moving company and he needed to like hire somebody to do their whole like revamp of their website, SEO. And from there, like I landed this really big contract where I didn't even have to think about what I was going to do next after I quit the restaurant. I just quit and it was like a decision I knew I had to make. And then the next day I got a phone call. And to me, that was just the universe telling me like, you made the right choice. And the universe has the interesting way of communicating with us, like whether we're on the right path or not. And I think everybody has like a different way that the universe will communicate with them. And what's really important is understanding that communication and how it tries to communicate with you.
It feels satisfying to fail.
Hello friends, welcome to this new episode of the F.A.I.L Talks. This episode is a bit special because I am with someone that I admire a lot for being a winner and open-minded. He was supposed to be in the first episode of the series, but it has been difficult to schedule it. But he still came today to share with us his experience and his perception of life and failures. Welcome Ben, aka King of Blueberries.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. It's a pleasure. So yeah, I'm right now working as the CEO of Tender Finance, as well as working on a handful of other projects. I'm an esoteric astrologer, aspiring to be, constantly learning. I love helping people. I love helping people find alignment, help them find their purpose. I'm a digital nomad. I've been traveling around, going to different conferences, different kind of events around the world for the last 2 years. I'm originally from Canada and just been an entrepreneur for about the last 10 or 12 years. Learned a lot over this time. I owned a couple of restaurants at one point. I owned a marketing agency. I did a couple of startups in the crypto space, as well as day trading in the crypto space, as well as educating people about how to get into crypto, about how to trade, risk management, and all these kind of things.
And what was your academic background?
Yeah, I originally went to school for computer science. It wasn't at the time what I really enjoyed, more just kind of like something I was forced into. Didn't really click for me. And then from there, took a couple of years off and then went back into digital media, learning about everything from photography, videography, website design, Flash back in the day. From there, ended up going into a really prestigious video game design program and graduated from there and started working in the video game design in 2012.
And before changing your formation, did you finish first?
No, I dropped out after 1 year, which is a very interesting story. And I also dropped out from digital media design. Dropped out twice before actually finding something I enjoyed and then graduated.
How did you find the thing you enjoyed and the thing you wanted to do for your life?
When I was a kid, I always enjoyed playing video games. I really enjoyed the strategy behind it. I loved playing video games that like more of a puzzle style, or like they had some kind of economy or something that was more than just like a mindless thing. And when it actually started with Neopets. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that website, but I started actually learning how to code when I was building like a website in HTML for one of my pets. And I really actually enjoyed that. And that's what wanted to pursue is website design. And this is like back in like 1999, before, the internet was really a thing. And so when I told my dad I wanted to go into website design and graphic design, he's like, that's not even a real job. You just like, so when I went to computer science, I didn't really feel motivated or passionate to be there. I was learning a little bit about programming. I thought it was what I wanted to do, but we were learning like things that were like, okay, like this is how you program a bank register. And I'm like, I don't really care for this. So it was after that I met a friend he used to make these like digital animations and little videos and skits, and he built lots of really cool websites. And he was actually my inspiration. He told me about the program that he took, and so I really got inspired by him and applied for the same program. And within that program, I realized that it was very entry level, and I already had some of these skills just from learning on my own. And so that's the reason I dropped out from the second program and found a video game design program that I went to at Vancouver Film School. And so there was when I really was able to put together all these blocks. There's a little bit of a technical aspect. There's also like an artistic aspect, and video games encompass all of it. So that's where I truly found my passion and went with that.
Already when you were back in school, you were already an autodidact. You were learning.
Yeah, the space like back then was evolving very quickly. If you think of like video games, like in the early 2000s, going from like just Mario 2D, and then you start having like Zelda and 3D coming out. Even when I was in school, our teachers, they were 3D modeling teacher, for example. He worked in the game industry back when it was 2D. So he was even trying to learn about what to teach us at the same time. So for me, I was like, okay, well, I can get ahead if I just teach myself. And the school was good because it gave us lots of connections, and you had the classmates. And there was a couple of us that really always wanted to push things further. And so we would learn a lot from the teachers. They would be there for support, but we also got what we put in. For me, it was a lot more research and learning.
Did this experience led you to blockchain? How did you feel really?
In video game design, like when I was in that platform, in that program, that's where like all the nerds are. So we're very into the technology and the space. And there's a couple of programmers in there who just are very, like intertwined with all of the new technology and stuff that's coming out. And that's when I found out about Bitcoin in 2012. So through all this network of pretty much nerds, right? So when I learned about it, I thought this was fascinating. I'm like, this is really cool. I went and I tried to buy some. I remember the first time, and it was like $5. And I was broke, sharing an apartment with 4 people, 1 bedroom. And I was like, okay, do I buy $100 worth of this Bitcoin stuff or what? So I tried to go and buy it, and it was so complex. I remember I'd have to create my own wallet, like a paper wallet, and then have my seed phrase. And it looked sketchy at the time. And like, I don't know if I want to put my credit card number in here. So I didn't end up actually buying it, but that's how I started following it throughout the years. And every time it goes up, and I'm like, man, I really should. But from there, like, I didn't actually really get into the space full time until right before the pandemic. I decided to get out of the restaurant industry. Felt like it wasn't really fulfilling me in the way that I wanted to. And then that's when I really started to push more into being in the crypto space. I'd still been following it. I still had like my investments up until that time, but it was like right before the pandemic where I really took the jump in. And the pandemic helped me because I was able to just sit and learn as much as I could. I didn't really have any other option. And then started learning how to program smart contracts and Solidity, and really got immersed.
Which show did you buy your first cryptocurrency?
It was in 2015 or 2016, around there.
So you had a lot of time to decide to engage in this.
Yeah, when I was right after school working in video game design, the industry, it's not like the most profitable, especially when you're starting out. Money wasn't always available for me to be saving or anything. It was mostly just living paycheck to paycheck. My lifestyle was a lot different. I used to like to party. So for me, if I did have some extra money, that's what I always chose to spend it on. But yeah, eventually started really realizing that I should be investing a little bit. And that's when I started. And I still probably should have been investing more, but then I got into trading. So any investment I did make, I ended up losing. So learned a lot of lessons there, and it helped get me to where I am now.
Did you already have some friends in the space before?
Very few. There was a couple of us, like my roommate and I, we always talked about it a lot, and we're up to date and keeping track of everything. We met in probably 2014, and not a lot of people knew about it back then, especially where I was. But as time progressed, I started to meet more and more people who were involved and who did have their investments. And
when you decided, when you went into this industry, were you still dreaming about the video gaming industry?
No, I was in the restaurant industry at this time. I worked in the video game industry only for about a year before getting the opportunity to open the restaurant. And then that's when I left the video game industry and went into restaurants. So I wasn't there for a long time.
Tell us why. Why did you leave?
I was living in Calgary, and there wasn't any studios in Calgary at the time. And so I was working for a company remotely, and it was at the time like living with my parents. I couldn't really afford to be on my own. The money wasn't great. And so I didn't really have good experience because I was stuck in my room all day working. And the guy I was working for, he was pretty cool, but like he also didn't really have a good vision of what he wanted to build. And when I got the opportunity for the restaurant, it seemed like this shiny, different kind of world, right? So from being like behind a computer all day to being out in front of people all day and eating socials, to me, it seemed like something that could be fun. So I took that opportunity and definitely learned a lot from that experience. No, I'm not a foodie at all, actually. I never have been. But I was like, my brother was the foodie. And so me and him were going into it together. I was more of like the party guy. He was more of the food guy, right? And handled kitchen, I handled the front. And it made this like really, really awesome place with, it's fun to be around. The food was really good. My mom was also the chef. She made the menu and all the recipes. And so, yeah.
And how many years did it last?
So the first restaurant lasted 4 years. And then we took a break. And then there was a gap for 2 years. That's where I started the marketing company and started really going into SEO. There was a little portion of that where we were helping people like grow their social media accounts on Instagram and that kind of thing, working with businesses. And we actually had one player who was in the NFL. We were working with his Instagram account. So it was actually going really well. And then Instagram changed their terms and service, and then all that kind of whole thing went downhill. And then from there, we opened our second restaurant. And I was only involved in the second restaurant for maybe 6 months before deciding that this wasn't what I wanted to do anymore, and sold my shares and started going full-time into crypto.
The restaurant was your first entrepreneurship project.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And
That was
did you already like to create projects when you were a child, or was it with life with your brother that wanted maybe to open a restaurant?
Yeah, my dad, he was an entrepreneur. He owned his own hair salon and he owned his own clothing store. And lots of my family, they owned their own businesses, my cousins. And so I knew that was always something I wanted to do, was start my own business somehow, whether it would be like my own gaming studio or something. I always wanted to build my own. I always had a lot of passion and drive for that. And it was awesome with the restaurant. It gave me the first opportunity to see what it was like. I learned a lot about just marketing, finance, management, like all these different tools. It's like one of the most complicated businesses, right? And time intensive. So I'm very grateful for that experience and taught me a lot about whole different kinds of sectors. And
you said that you were most of the time in your apartment. Were you still a social guy? Was it a challenge for you to go out and go out of your comfort zone?
yeah, I definitely enjoyed being in the comfort of my own house and being on my computer. I wasn't very social, but I would go out, have a lot of drinks, and that would bring out the extroverted person in me. And that was a part of the struggle in the restaurant, was I had to be drinking in order to be this like life of the parties. But at the same time, it comes with a lot of attention. And so that attention becomes very addicting. And you want to be there. And then when you're there, you want to be drinking, and it led me down this like life where I was just constantly drunk and partying. And it was very good. Like I had a lot of fun. I made a lot of memories, met a lot of my amazing friends, but it was definitely not sustainable. And that's what I learned from that.
But you don't have any regrets about it?
No.
So you said in your introduction that you were still learning astrology and esoteric astrology. Can you tell to our listeners what does it mean?
Yeah, so there's lots of different types of astrology. More common ones are like traditional or Western. There's Vedic astrology, and then there's esoteric or new astrology. So Western will focus like on the mundane, what you're supposed to be doing, your personality, relationships, and this kind of thing. And then you have Vedic, it goes into a little bit more about your soul and your mundane and your personality, of how you can integrate. And then esoteric astrology focuses more on your soul and your purpose. You know, how I like to look at it is we all have a horoscope or like a natal chart, and that is like your blueprint for your life. And so as an astrologer, I see astrology as a language, right? So it's just signs and energies and all these things. And it's a message to you from your soul, like what you want to accomplish, what struggles you're going to face in your lifetime, what is the best way to overcome those, and how to be in alignment, making sure that you're walking on the right path and fulfilling your purpose. So for me as an astrologer, it's about translating the messages in someone's chart to them to help them find alignment, find purpose, and overcome those challenges that they're facing in their life. So I came across it actually very randomly. A friend of mine invited me into this class, and I had no idea what it was. He gave me this description, and it seemed like it was like some crazy stuff that we were going to be learning. And I was like, okay, I'll take a step and see what it's all about. And it was nothing like I had expected, and started learning more about the soul and more about these like ancient teachings and ancient wisdom. And I really enjoyed it. And it was just like all clicking for me really easily. From there, he had a friend who taught astrology, and she was coming to town and she was going to be teaching her course. And I was like, I'm here, I'm in this mode where I'm just learning and absorbing all this knowledge. I jumped into the course and it just clicked for me. It felt like it was like a language that I knew my whole life. And at that point, like I knew that this was something that I needed to be just studying more and getting more familiar with. And I saw the potential of how I could use this to really affect and help people in their lifetime. So
but in our everyday life, we meet astrology in many ways. And I guess you already knew about it, even if you didn't know it was that deep.
Subconsciously, it's still there, right? You stand in the sun, you feel the sun and the energy, right? And it's the most obvious one. And that's why our personality, like when somebody says they're Aries or they're Leo, that's their sun sign. And that's the one that resonates most with them because the sun is the closest. So that energy is going to be the strongest. But there's also 12 other planets, and there's millions and billions of other stars out there that are also affecting us with that energy as well. And it's just not as evident to us that it's there, but once you start to study and you start to understand how these energies are working and what they're actually doing, it becomes really clear when you're looking at someone's chart where and how these things are manifesting in someone's life. And being able to be aware of that is very powerful, because then it like acts as like a way to measure whether or not you're on the right path or not. And that could be very important for somebody, because from my experience, a lot of people seem lost. They don't know where they're supposed to be going. They don't have any way to use as like a verification of, okay, this is the right way or this is the wrong way. So
most of us, when we discover esoteric astrology, maybe the first reflex we will have will be to contact someone, an expert, and find someone that we will meet regularly. But you decided to become an expert. Where did that came from?
Yeah, where it came from was I noticed, so there was, I think, about 15 people in the class when I was learning it. And I got the story from my teacher. Her name is Charlene, and she's a little bit older. She's been doing this for a really long time. And it became clear that this stuff isn't really easy to understand. It's not really easy. Like she was having troubles getting everybody to really understand. And the other classmates, you could tell that there was like a barrier to the knowledge, or it took like a certain type of way of thinking to be able to really understand this. And so for me, it just resonated so much to the point where it was like, it's like I knew this language. And through this like understanding I had, I was able to actually simplify it in a way that my teacher hadn't even thought of, to be able to teach it more effectively. And so being able to see it in that way is really how I knew that, okay, I'm meant to be here. This knowledge needs to be passed forward. And so I need to be that sponge who's going to absorb as much of this knowledge as I can, to be able to preserve it, to be able to harness it, and to be able to also pass it forward. So I felt very much that it was my duty to be here and to learn it and be this kind of like channel for this type of wisdom to come through.
How long has it been now?
It's been 3.5 years, actually, that I've been learning and studying. And
what is your relationship with other, I don't know if they are also esoteric, but for example, numerology?
Yeah. So what I would call it, I don't know, everybody has their own name, but to me, these are the metaphysical sciences: numerology, astrology, human design. There's a lot, like even maybe you can consider tarot cards, or these are all things that are very interesting to me. But also using these sciences and integrating them with traditional science is something that's also very intriguing to me. Quantum physics, quantum mechanics. There have been a lot of like my mentors in the esoteric astrology space who have been using esoteric astrology to help discover more about quantum physics, right? And so like when you think of quantum physics and you think of one of the terms called quantum entanglement, how every single thing that you do is intertwined and has some kind of effect and blah, blah. Science is actually starting to prove this. From an ancient term, you know, the word karma is essentially the same exact concept, right? And so we've known about this for so long on this side of the spectrum, and now science is actually proving that it's actually a reality, right? So for me, that's really cool. And being able to explore how these metaphysical sciences can help us make more scientific discoveries is something that I'm very interested in as well. So not only just from a personal development side, there's like an advancement of technology and science and research. I'm definitely very interested in all of these types of modalities and ancient teachings because I think there's so much there that we still have yet to learn.
Okay, that's really interesting. And we will read some books.
Yeah, I do read a little bit of books. There aren't a lot of written books on these topics. There are a lot of theses and papers that people have written. I like to read those. There are some YouTube videos, but I like to more get the insight directly from, like, I'm lucky because I have access to these mentors and teachers. A lot of my knowledge has come from them, and I'm very grateful for them and what they've been able to help me with.
So, except esoteric parts, you didn't have any inspiration from books or from?
There are some books, like if you were to research esoteric astrology books, there's a guy named Douglas Baker. He's the one who wrote these like dictionaries for esoteric astrology, and so they're a good way to get introduced into it, and then from there, integrating, maybe buying a couple more of his books. He really goes in depth on like how to do a reading for somebody, how to interpret the chart, what all of these different types of aspects mean. And so for somebody who is very interested, there is a lot of resources out there to learn. I'm not the biggest reader myself, so I've always had troubles with learning from books. Everybody has their way of learning.
Before you said you left the restaurants just before COVID, I guess it was 2019.
Yeah, 2019, yeah.
And I saw on your Instagram page that you quit drinking alcohol.
Yeah, that's true. So it all happened about 4 years ago today, where I really started reflecting on my life and looking at what it was that I was doing and how I can become a better person or a better version of myself. And that's where I really started to question everything that I was believing, right? Okay, let's say I'm eating meat and I've been told that it's really healthy for me or it's really good for me, or I realized that this wasn't my thoughts. Like, these are just what other people were telling me. And so that's when a friend of mine, she started like sending me these videos, and that really started getting me to ask these questions. And actually like having this like motivation to get these answers myself, that's when I started to research, like, okay, so what's happening in these animal farms and in these slaughterhouses and in these industries, and even outside of food, but like in the entertainment, in the zoos, the circuses, these like SeaWorld and swimming with the dolphins industries. Like, I started to understand how little like people actually cared about these actual animals, right? And so I always used to call myself an activist for human rights, and I always used to say I was an animal lover. And as somebody who went through growing up in Calgary, in my class, I was like the only person of color. And it felt very isolating to me. Like, I didn't fit in, and I always wanted to fit in. And I always spoke about that and used that as a way to relate with other people and their struggles. And when it came to the animals in these industries, from my perspective, I realized that they actually had it like a lot worse. Like, they don't have a voice. They don't have anything that they can say about it. We treat them as if they are just objects. We don't take into consideration anything that might matter to them. And when I made that realization, it was like, okay, I'm really not living in alignment with what I believe, right? Like, how can I say that I'm an animal lover when I'm essentially like paying them or paying for them to be mistreated, abused, and exploited? And that it was that night where I looked in the mirror and I was like, okay, I need to make this change. And up until this point, I was the guy who was making fun of vegans, who was not really understanding what it was all about, and like pretty much on the carnivore diet and all these kind of things. And so it was a hard decision. I'm looking at myself, like, I actually was in the mirror staring and like, who do I want to be? And I felt that I had to put this pride and this ego aside and make the right choice. And so that's from there, it catapulted into, okay, I spent so much of my life just drinking alcohol. And I realized that I was making all these excuses, right? Oh, I needed to be drunk or drinking to be social or to be talking to people or to be fun or all these things. And all these things started to become evident now because my mind was starting to clear up with all of this noise. And so I realized alcohol, it doesn't serve me. It's just sending me in the wrong path. I was spending a lot of money and I was spending a lot of time and energy. Like, I wasn't really walking my purpose. I didn't feel that it was taking me where I wanted to go. And then I started learning about other things like caffeine. And on this journey, I really wanted to cleanse and try and just also become less of a consumer and just consume only what I needed so that I could be able to use my money into more helping others, helping animals, and fighting for what I truly believe in. And it's been like a journey. That's something that I'm still working towards, really understanding, being able to fully listen to my body. But it's been one of the most rewarding things I've been focusing on.
And was it a one night or one day decision, like for the meat or for drinking alcohol?
Yeah. Actually, both of them were one day decisions. It was almost as if the universe was like, it gave me the sign right then and there.
Yeah.
And it was like, I couldn't do it. It was like if you're driving down the side of the road and you like a dead squirrel, right? Once I made the realization, when I was at the table and there was like meat there, it didn't look like food. What I started to see and feel was the animal, right? It's gross when you see it on the side of the road, but when it's on a dinner plate and it's all covered with sauce and seasoning and all that stuff, we lose the connection. And when it clicked, there was no going back. Like I couldn't even if I wanted. And with alcohol, I got a very similar realization that, oh, this is what I'm actually putting in my body. This is what I'm doing. This is not me. And not to say that I was a bad person when I was drinking. A lot of people had painted this version of who they thought I was as this person who would drink a lot and party a lot and blah, blah. And I realized like nobody really knew me, and it wasn't their fault. It was my fault, because the only person that I would ever show them was that person, right? And so to me, it was like, hey, I don't want to be this person anymore. And it was like an easy decision for me to quit drinking alcohol too.
When I'm listening to you, I feel like it was, I wouldn't say a destiny, but everything was made to come to this phase.
Yeah.
You said your mind was more clear, and I guess this was at the same period where you were more interested about astrology.
Yeah.
If this experience happened before, let's say 5 years before, it wouldn't have the same effect on you.
Yeah. So destiny is an interesting one, right? Because with astrology, like we all have our purpose and our mission and things that we want to accomplish in this life, as our soul wants to accomplish in this life. And it's there, but it's our choice whether or not we want to accept that destiny, right? It was at that point that I accepted my destiny. And so I wish I would have accepted it a lot sooner, but we could try and sit and regret that and say, like, oh, I wish you did it sooner. But the reality of it is all of those things needed to happen for me to get to that point to make that decision. It's almost like as if it was like perfectly planned by some really intelligent beings or intelligent creatures that we can't understand. Yeah, like as much as I could say it would have been awesome if I did that 5 years earlier, I don't know how it would have all played out from there, but I'm definitely very grateful that at the time I made those decisions, and it's brought me down this path. And the biggest indicator in my life for whether I'm living in alignment or not is how much I'm struggling with money, actually. So I've always noticed when I'm doing things in alignment, money always comes out of it, compared to if I'm doing things out of alignment, it becomes a really big struggle. Finances start to get really rough. And that's how I can almost use, if things are getting really tough, they're not just really tough where it's, okay, I got to give up. But if money is like starting to like really get to a point where I'm struggling, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills or that kind of thing, I need to sit and evaluate, okay, what is it here, or how am I living that's not in alignment? And so the biggest indication for that was the day after I quit the restaurant and sold my shares, I got a phone call from a friend. He had this moving company and he needed to like hire somebody to do their whole like revamp of their website, SEO. And from there, like I landed this really big contract where I didn't even have to think about what I was going to do next after I quit the restaurant. I just quit, and it was like a decision I knew I had to make. And the next day I got a phone call. And to me, that was just the universe telling me like, you made the right choice. And so the universe has the interesting way of communicating with us, like whether we're on the right path or not. And I think everybody has like a different way that the universe will communicate with them. And what's really important is understanding that communication and how it tries to communicate with you.
Did you consider this experience as a failure?
I didn't. When I went into it, I was definitely going into it for ego, because I missed like the attention. I missed the fame or everything that comes with being a restaurant owner and all these things. And it was actually, so this was in 2019. I'd actually went vegan 3 months before we opened this restaurant, and we signed the lease and started building the restaurant 2 months before that. So it took us about 5-6 months to get it open. And it was in that time where I was actually making all this transition. So I quit drinking alcohol, I quit eating meat, quit drinking caffeine. So when I made the plan or the decision to open the second restaurant, I was still drinking, I was still eating meat. But then actually when we opened, I was now sober, so I had to learn how to run this experience, manage this experience while I was sober. It was hard because there was animal products being served everywhere. We did have a really big vegan menu, which was awesome. We were able to have a lot of influence on people with potentially trying something new when it came to food. But I was trying to find the justifications for, okay, I'm here preaching about this lifestyle. Meanwhile, I'm also profiting from the opposite. And that was the biggest conflict that led me to the point where, okay, I know I have to quit. I talked to my partner and I told him, I was like, look, if you are willing to make this a vegan restaurant, I will stay. But if not, I want to leave. You can either buy out my shares or I can try and find someone else to buy them out. For me, it was definitely an alignment decision. And I just knew that it was something I had to do.
Okay, I see. After this experience, you had many different startups where you worked.
Yeah.
You, even on your CV, you have a professional trader. How did you learn all that? Was it after you left restaurants, you started focusing on learning about crypto and different knowledge? Or what was the process?
Yeah, I think just like the way that my whole life has been preparing me for the crypto and blockchain space. Because also when I was growing up, my dad was a day trader. And so he was always trading on the stock market. He used to do options trading as well. And so even when I was like a kid, I was like very immersed in the space. I loved talking about that kind of stuff with my dad. And he was teaching me about markets and economies. And so like from a young age, I understood concepts that still to this day, people don't really understand. And I had a really good understanding of how kind of money worked in the financial system. And so that's one aspect of blockchain. And then you have a technology aspect. So that was what I got from learning how to code and building video game designs. And a lot of it is marketing, which when I was in the restaurant, like all I was learning was how do I market? How do I promote? And marketing to me is not just how you get the word out about something, but it's what are you going to be talking about? What is the product? How are you going to price it? Where are you going to put it? Right. And then it's going to be how you're going to promote it. Right. So I had this more of a wide view on marketing that wasn't just like, hey, just pay a lot of money to some influencers to talk about you, because even if you do that, if your product isn't that good, you're not going to get anywhere. So the restaurant taught me a lot about that. And then video game design was all about user experience, right? Like when somebody's playing a video game, like they want it to be immersive, they want it to be fun, they want to understand what they're doing, right? One of the core concepts when you're building a video game is you have to actually teach the player how to play the game without actually teaching them, right? So if you think about Mario and the progression of it, it's like the first level is teaching you how to jump. And so the way that the puzzles are separated, it's like it teaches, okay, you can jump this far. Then they make it a little bit wider, right? The gap. And so you learn from there that you can run and jump and you'll jump farther, right? And all of the levels in Mario are essentially just teaching you all of the skills that you need to learn to be able to beat the final level, right? And so that's how I understood this, like user going through a certain game or experience, and you have to be the one who's like developing their skills as they go along. In the crypto space, it is very complex. Not a lot of people understand a lot of this stuff, but I have this opportunity where I can build these blocks for people to learn from and eventually get to this understanding, right? And so then you combine all of these sectors into one, and you have this like really amazing knowledge base for how to navigate the crypto world. So from market and financial systems, my understanding, and then from the technical background, from the marketing and promotion product background into the user experience background, I think all of the things that I had found myself in my life put me into the perfect knowledge base to be where I'm at in the crypto space. So it's interesting to look back and see how that all played out.
And what you just said was a really nice analogy with Mario, because it was mainly the onboarding stage when you create a crypto project, or you will teach your new user, your new member, how they can become your next, let's say, ambassadors, for example.
Yeah.
It's something that many crypto projects right now miss in the marketing.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of like amazing projects out there, but they do lack that one of those aspects. Like there's a lot of good projects with lots of good tech, but then they don't have best user interface or user experience or marketing, or you don't have the right placement or the right education that's required. And sad to see a lot of these projects just failing because they couldn't get one of those aspects, right? And so it is a very complex, very complex thing to actually build something to have it successful that people can actually understand, that they can use, and then also be able to help it grow in the future.
And now you are the new CEO of the decentralized lending and borrowing platform. I think you were already part of the team from the launch.
Yes.
So can you tell us how did you get the idea for the project, your team, and what was your challenge when you launched?
So as like a person who has been investing in crypto for a long time, you go through these stages. It starts with like buying some kind of meme coin and you're hoping that it goes up. So Dogecoin was the first one I bought 5 years ago, let's say. And I was like, man, I don't even know how many billions of coin that I had. And then you lose it. And then you're like, okay, now you've gone through this like buying the meme coins, right? And then you start investing into Bitcoin and you're like, okay, I'm going to hold these for a long time. And then from there you learn about DeFi and then you're like, oh, I can put my Bitcoin here and earn interest on it. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm just not going to worry about trading anymore. And then from there, you're like, oh, like this place is offering better interest than this place. So I'm going to go and put my Bitcoins here and earn some interest here. And then you start realizing that there's actually like a lot of places that a lot of different strategies to this like yield and interest earning stuff. So then I was looking for, okay, what are the best interest rates I can earn on what product? So then you start doing the risk for, okay, on this asset, I can make 1,000% interest, but it's probably going to go to zero in a couple months. So that's probably not worth it. And so from this kind of research, I found GLP that's on the GMX ecosystem. And so I was blown away how they can just be paying 20, 25, sometimes more interest so consistently. And so I put a lot of money into GLP. And I think the first time I bought in, it was around like $1, roughly around there. And I was earning good interest. And then the bear market kind of came. And then even though I was making a lot of interest, like the price of GLP was going down because of just the market going down. And so I was like, I wonder if there could be a way where I could hedge this risk. But then I was also thinking, I've used Aave, I've used Compound, and I've been able to leverage like my Bitcoin or my stable coins. And GLP is like way more stable than Bitcoin or Ethereum. And it's not as stable as a stable coin, but why can't I use this as a collateral asset and borrow against it, right? So I can then leverage the interest that I'm earning on GLP. Because this product didn't exist, we were like, okay, we need to build this. And so the reason came from, it's something that we would want to use. And so that's why we built it. And so we actually started building, I think last February. So it's been over almost a year and a half. And finally in January, we launched. But there have been a lot of struggles along the way. We were trying to raise capital to help us fund and build the project. We started building around when it was still like bull market, and then market quickly changed into bear market. And now a lot of these VCs were not so easy to give out money, right? And so what would have been like an easy raise, like a $30 or $40 million valuation, would have gave us a lot of money to help build faster, turn into like barely being able to raise a $5-10 million valuation, if that, right? And that was a little bit of a challenge. So we funded everything internally. Everything was bootstrapped. It put like a little bit of a cap on how fast we could build and launch. By the time we launched, there were other like projects that were similar, nothing that was doing exactly like what we were doing, but then we still had this struggle where we didn't really have a lot of manpower. So we were putting in a lot of work ourselves, a lot of time, not a lot of sleep. But we've been like figuring out ways to make it work, becoming more efficient as a team. Just recently, we've been able to hire a couple more people. And a couple other the challenges are when you're working with such a small team, if somebody needs some time off, what do you do? Or how do you replace that person or compensate? And, there's so many different parts to a startup, like just like even community management and people having the Telegram group under control. And we're such a small team, it's hard for us when we're focusing on building to be watching over the Telegram groups, for example. But then we also don't have the budget to necessarily be hiring somebody. And then you have the community, like if the price goes up, everybody gets super excited, but then the price goes down and then everybody starts freaking out. And we're trying not to pay attention to the price because we know there's still so much for us to build. But sometimes it gets really discouraging when the community's, like these guys are rugging and there are all these allegations or things that come up. And it's, guys, we're here. We're not going anywhere. We're trying to build something cool. I'm sorry that it takes more than 4 seconds to build a whole protocol. I wish I could just snap my fingers and everything will be built and ready. And that's from speaking with other developers and other founders, there's something to be said about how amazing the community can be, but also at how much they can actually break you. So the biggest challenge is learning how to take the critical things from the community, but then understanding when somebody is just saying something because they want the price to go down so they can buy some more, or when people are in there and they're supporting you, and or it looks like they're supporting you, but it's just so that they can create some hype so that they can make money for themselves and dump their token on everybody else. And when it comes to what is the best way to design the tokens and all these kind of things, that wasn't something I was really involved with in the project before I took over as CEO. I was just hired on to be a developer building the smart contracts. And then the old CEO, like, he's still working with us, but he comes from a very traditional side of finance and business. And he realized essentially that the vision that he had was he wanted to run a decentralized company as like a centralized company. And the ethos just wasn't there for the community and how, like, what would make a successful project on Arbitrum or that kind of thing. And me having been in the space for so long and understanding, okay, this is what you have to do here. This is how you're able to build a community, especially because we didn't have the dollars to like spend on advertising, right? So what we had to do is go down a road where we were building something more grassroots, really building the community. And the way you build the community is by, trust and communication and the real ethos, just like GMX or the other big projects. So that was the main reason for me taking over, was because I was really able to bring that vision to life. And from there, like, there was a lot of decisions that were made before I was in this position. And even like here, like, I don't really consider myself a CEO. I consider myself as the protector of the project until we get to a point where it becomes a DAO and all of the decisions are being made by all the shareholders. Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of challenges, a lot to learn from these challenges for sure. There have been like some pretty big like events. Like, we did get exploited back in March, which was very eye-opening to us. It was like probably my worst nightmare come true.
It feels satisfying to fail.
Congrats, you just finished the first part of our podcast with Ben. See you the next week to listen to the second part of the episode where Ben tells how challenging it has been to handle the exploit of his project, his vision of how Web3 and AI can impact the world, how he became a digital nomad, and much more. Thank you for listening to this episode, and see you soon.
To stay up to date with our latest episodes, follow us on the streaming platforms and our social networks in the description.